Welcome to SEC Football Live here from Full 40 Sports and that SEC podcast, of course. Please head on over to the Full 40 Sports YouTube page for previews of all SEC games. Oh, there we go. Switching sides on me. I'm not ready for the pre-snap motion, Mike. I was not ready for that. I do appreciate it. Michael Bratton, Braden Gall here. Jump into the comments. We got a lot of stuff to talk to you guys about today on the show. Mike, how are you, sir? Good to see you.
Feels dark in here, but I'm doing well. Maybe it's just the Tennessee-Alabama game. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I got a few spicy takes for you on the Alabama-Tennessee game. And,
you called them something different a minute ago.
I have a theory now about Alabama, and I have a theory about Tennessee. I think both of which will piss off Tennessee fans, even though it's kind of a positive for Tennessee. So just bear with me. Is today your birthday, Michael?
It is, yes, sir. Yes,
Happy
it is.
Happy birthday, Michael Bratton.
Thank you. I still showed up.
Don't look a day over 27. I do appreciate you coming and hanging out with us here. All right, so Georgia and Florida, the cocktail party. We'll get to that. Tennessee and Kentucky, we've got a game there. Ole Miss survives. What does it mean on the road against Auburn? They'll host Vanderbilt this weekend. South Carolina, Texas A&M. It's a game that's going to happen in the SEC, I guess. We've got one of the ugliest football games that's happened in 10 years, 12 years in the conference. We'll discuss that. Missouri. I have another question about Missouri to ask. So MIZ to all you great Mizzou fans out there. I know there's a lot of you guys. So I guess I'll just get started with the Tennessee stuff first, because I actually think there's a lot of positive to be taken from what I watched against Alabama on Saturday. And number one, first and foremost, and this is to you. I don't know if you've done this, Michael. I have not checked your timeline on Elon Sewer. I have not checked it.
You're better off not checking it.
I was listening to your show and I heard you mention it briefly that you thought maybe Tennessee people might be a bit frustrated with the refs. I think you're all a bunch of fucking pussies. Look,
I haven't really mentioned it because I don't.
No, you didn't.
I don't care.
The refs had nothing to do with that loss. And here's why it's positive what I think I saw against Alabama. I think I saw a team that's a quarterback away. I think I saw a team that made a couple coaching mistakes. They went for it on fourth down. Maybe we could disagree with some of those decisions. Maybe you should cover somebody, on the second play of the second half. I think there were some mistakes that were made, but I saw a program that is a quarterback away from competing at the highest level in the SEC. I saw a program with pieces in the right place. They need some more receivers. They need some more secondary players. They need a little bit more depth. But I saw a coach that was, sure, he made some questionable decisions, but I saw a coach that was okay with the moment. I saw a team that was okay with the moment. And I saw a team that was one big-time quarterback away from competing at the highest level. And we can get to how the second half played out, and we can get to Alabama, and we can get to Joe Milton. There's a lot of things to talk about. The refs had nothing to do with the game. They had nothing to do with it. You don't lose. You don't go on a 27-0 run and give up 27 straight points and get your ass kicked because of the refs. Complaining about the refs is some lazy shit. I don't want to hear it. It is about the other team, the coaches, and the players. You got outcoached. You got outplayed. But I saw a team that was up to the challenge. And that, to me, is my big takeaway and how I spin that game positively for Tennessee.
I'm sorry. Did I wake up and it's the Bush Jones era again? I mean, what we're sitting here saying, oh, we gave him a shot. We gave him a good half. No, this is a Tennessee that won 11 games, that won the Orange Bowl, that, some people, not many, but some people thought maybe they could win the East. Some people even thought Joe Milton would be like a Heisman candidate or something crazy like that.
Why do you keep telling jokes on the show?
We're sitting here saying, oh, well, they tried. They looked competitive for a half of football against a team that I think's in decaying of a dynasty here, that I don't think has a legitimate shot to win anything of significance. And I'm talking about Alabama now. No, there's no pat on the back. You tried hard. You lost. You got dominated in the second half. There's nothing.
Okay.
They may. I think there's a good chance they lose to Kentucky. The season's over. No, there's nothing positive about getting your ass kicked in a rivalry game in the second half. No. Now, if it was like a 3-point game and there was a controversial call, maybe I'm there with the people saying the refs and all this. But no, they got their ass smoked, and the season is a loss away from going up. The only, if they lose to Georgia, even though it is at home, and you win the rest, I still think it's a good season. But if you lose to Kentucky, Mizzou fans don't want to hear this, but if you lose to Mizzou, hell, you are definitely going to lose to Georgia. So I mean, like 8-4, 8-4 is not a good year. It never again under Josh Heupel should 8-4 be celebrated at Tennessee. And that
I'm not celebrating 8-4.
You're celebrating.
That's not what I'm doing. No, it's not.
They looked good. They looked good.
No,
for
I'm telling you the facts. This is the problem with you. You can't acknowledge the facts. I don't give a shit about where the team finishes at the end of the year. 9-3, 8-4 is irrelevant to where the program is supposed to be in the future. Where the program is supposed to be in the future is competing at the highest possible level for national championships. And if I want the team to compete for national championships, I need to see them do that year in and year out against the best. And what I saw on Saturday was a team that, yes, they failed in the biggest moment. You know who else fails most times in college football? All of the teams except for one. All of them. Every single team finishes with 2, 3, 4 losses except for 1 or 2. So I have context and perspective. I don't need, my job is to analyze what I saw. And if they had an elite big time quarterback, they probably win that game. If they have an elite big time quarterback, I think they probably compete with Georgia this year. If they have an elite big time quarterback and another year of recruiting, Tennessee can win the SEC. And that is what matters if I am judging Josh Heupel big picture. If you want to yell and scream about going forward on fourth down, I'm not gonna argue with you. You can debate. He got totally outcoached. They got their ass kicked. I completely agree in the second half. The refs had nothing to do with it. So if any one of you in the comments says it's about the refs, I don't care. Had nothing to do with it. 50-50 calls are a part of the game. It is what it is. Referees make mistakes. They miss a holding call here. Maybe that one was a little ticky-tack there. You didn't lose the game because of the refs, so stop wasting your energy on it. Focus on what matters, which is that Alabama was better. They were the better team, the better coach, the better players in the second half.
Some say they have a big-time quarterback on the roster.
And that's my point. That might be the guy. We don't know. We don't know right now. But my takeaway was I was impressed with how I thought Joe Milton played one of the best halves of football his entire career. I don't think you can ask him to do more than that. They are limited. This is the whole Billy Napier, Florida thing. They have a ceiling, dude. They were not supposed to win the East. No one picked them. Like, if you were drunk, you picked them to win the East. If you were drunk, you picked them to win 11 games. If you were drunk and didn't know anything about football, that's what you picked. This was a 9-3-ish type of football team from the beginning. They've looked that way the entire year. But I saw a program that was prepared for the moment. And I think if I'm a Tennessee fan, I am holding on to that because that tells me that they have a chance to be better next year. And that's what matters to me.
Have you seen the stat? They're throwing it in the comments. Tennessee 1-4 on the road since being number 1. But
I'm sure. I don't know I don't know what that means, but sure.
Well,
okay.
To me, that's just a silly ass stat that
right.
People, because they played at Georgia, they played at Bama.
Yeah, it's hard.
They completely omit the Orange Bowl, that's not a home game. But South Carolina was a bad loss. I would argue at Florida was a bad loss, but I would say 95% of teams in the country, if they had to play at Georgia, at Alabama, at South Carolina, and at Florida, you're probably not doing better than 1-4. Am I wrong?
No, I don't disagree with that. Again, that is called, as we say in the business, context and nuance. And again, I wanted to see from Tennessee this year, I wanted to see a program develop off of last year. That's what I wanted to see. And if you're a Tennessee fan and you thought, hey, we're going to win the East and we're going to beat Bama again, like that's fine. That's your prerogative to think that way. That is not the way any rational human being analyzed the Tennessee Volunteers coming into the season. And what I'm seeing is, and somebody said it in the comments, I thought Tennessee was the better team on Saturday. Well, they weren't the better team. They were the better team in the first half. They were very prepared. They had a good game plan. Like, I just don't need that. I didn't need them to win that game for me to buy into Josh Heupel more and building the program more. Now, you go lose to Kentucky, you go lose to Missouri and Georgia, and you finish with 5 losses, then we're going to have a different conversation. You can't lose to the quote-unquote teams that are quote-unquote beneath you in the standings. Like, you can't lose to those teams.
Yeah.
And they already have one of those. That's Florida. So
now that gentleman in the comments says Florida's been better on the road. How soon we forget losses to Vanderbilt,
Billy Napier,
Kentucky, Utah. He beat South Carolina by 2 points. Credit him.
Yeah, sure. Anyway, I just think it's okay to step back from the immediate reaction to like, man, we shouldn't have gone for it on fourth down, or we got out coached, or why the fuck can't our secondary cover anybody at any point during the season, or the line of scrimmage got beat, or whatever. Look, that's all true stuff. None of that's wrong. But you can also step back from it and say, look, Bama is probably they're either going to win the West or they're going to finish in second. They're a pretty darn good football team, and losing on the road to Bama is, to your point.
What is the point, though? I don't understand what you're saying. You're just saying there's silver linings or something. Like, who cares? They lost a game that was winnable, a game that they. Again, I picked them to lose by 2 touchdowns. That's exactly what happened. But I didn't think they'd be up 27 at half. And it
Liquid Flames. Sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to. Sorry, Liquid Flames. The refs had nothing to do with it. Sorry, continue.
I just don't. I mean, to me they let one. They choked. They choked their ass off. That's how I look at it. So I don't know. I don't think there's any silver lining. Joe Milton.
I'm not saying it's good.
He played his best game. I'm not blaming Joe Milton either.
Yeah, I'm not saying the game was good. I'm not saying. Is it not possible to take a long-term and a short-term view? Sorry, Liquid. Is it not possible to do? Can you not do 2 things at one time? Are you not capable of chewing gum and walking at the same time?
I don't think so, because I think the perfect example, and none of these are fair because every situation's unique. But I did read an article. Matt Hayes. I'm a big fan of Matt Hayes. He wrote an article this week. It wasn't that long ago. Sam Pittman was the Arkansas man. Shane Beamer was the Gamecock man. And fair or not, I would say 75%, and maybe I'm overreacting, but 75% of each fan base probably wants that guy fired because they're so bad right now. And I get what you're saying, but what happens if Tennessee loses? Again, like I said, I don't think this is wildly unrealistic. Let's say they lose to Kentucky, Missouri, and Georgia. And then next year...
That's 5 losses. That's a problem. But let's have that conversation. But that's not what happened this weekend. They lost to Bama.
And then you drop one you shouldn't early next year, and then all of a sudden there's like, Jesus, is Heupel, that was just a 1-year gimmick. You know what I mean? Like, so no, because it can snowball, it can get away from you quick as hell. So guess if he is worth a shit, that won't happen to Josh Heupel. Like, that's it. That's the end of the I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I agree with you. If they lose to Kentucky and then Missouri and Georgia and they finish with 5 losses, there are more questions than answers about the program. But it's not because they got out coached in the second half against the greatest coach of all time on the road when Jalen Milroe is clearly significantly 10 times the quarterback that Tennessee has. It's just like I saw a program that was prepared, ready, and almost on par with Alabama after beating them last year. And I saw a program that is a big-time quarterback away and a little bit of depth away from maybe being able to win the conference. If Josh Heupel is that guy and all that stuff I just said is true, then they're not going to lose to Kentucky, Missouri, and Georgia. And if there are questions about Josh Heupel, big picture, long-term, which no one was asking this summer, which I don't think you should ask right now, more information has to come to light, man, if you're going to start asking those questions. They have to lose a bunch more games. And so you don't just get to say, like, right now I think Josh Heupel sucks because he's going to lose games. Well, no, you don't know that. I'm just going on what I saw this weekend, which is I see a program, and based on last year and the year before, I'm seeing a program recruit well. I'm seeing a program develop depth. They had a historically epic, greatest quarterback in the history of the program last year, and it resulted in a couple of extra wins. Now they've got a guy who's average. He's fine. And he played a really good game because he was really well prepared, and the game plan was sound. And they came out and they missed a few opportunities against a team that's better than them. You know, one thing I don't like to bash these college players. I don't care that they're making money. So I'm not going to. Don't take this as me bashing the player, but
sure.
The biggest issue, and I'll probably hold this against Heupel his entire career. I don't care what he does. He started Joe Milton over Hendon Hooker, and credit you. I mean, I don't think this was realistic at all, but you were the one that said, well, hell, what they should do if they were smart, Hendon Hooker's going off the NFL, whatever it costs, get Sam Hartman. You said that. You said if this Tennessee team had Sam Hartman, they're going to be money. And Of course, I think he had a deal worked out with Notre Dame. I don't think that was realistic by any measure. But to your point, that guy's playing out of his mind.
Right.
I don't know. He's got a blind spot for Joe Milton, and I don't know. I don't know why.
MIZ SEC. We will talk about Missouri because they deserve a lot of conversation, and it's not arguing for arguing's sake. I actually genuinely thought that, like, I genuinely walked away from that game with one perspective, and Mike walked away from that game with a different perspective, and that's okay. We can disagree about it. That's totally fine. I just, again, I've got an opinion about Alabama coming up in a second that I don't think is going to be very popular either, but it's just how I feel. And I'm not going to ever do a show with you or anyone else where I don't tell you what I actually think. I don't make shit up. I don't fabricate stuff. It's not what I do. It's not my style. I've been doing this for 20 years. Not going to happen. Yep, that's me. Don't blame the refs. Don't blame the refs, you soft, lazy, just completely worthless fans. Don't blame the refs. It's stupid. Do you want to move on to my next take, or do we like?
I'm on to the next season already with Tennessee.
All right, great, cool. There's a lot of really great football games left, so don't miss those.
Now they beat Georgia. Crown them. You know,
crown them. Yeah. And I'm wrong, Ken. I'm wrong all the time. Ken hangs out all the time, so I'm. That's just ask my wife. I'm wrong constantly. Here's the thing about Alabama. I can't believe that this is how I feel about them, but they are extremely likable for the first time in 20 years. This is a likable football team. And if you're a fan of Tennessee or LSU or Auburn, I get it. You're not going to agree with me, and I'm not asking you to, but I'm capable of being objective. Nick Saban is nicer and kinder and funnier and sillier and giving like answers with actual honesty all season long since the summer. You've been pointing that out. Jalen Milroe is a genuinely good dude. He's a good kid, and he is fun to watch play. They are a flawed football team that likes to make a bunch of mistakes in the first half and then come back and find ways to win. And I think if they play Georgia in the SEC championship game, the country, for the first time in 20 years, will be rooting for Alabama, not against them. I think Alabama is actually likable this year. And that is one of the hardest things, one of the weirdest emotions I've ever felt watching SEC football.
Yeah. I mean, how could you not root for a roster with
I didn't say root. I didn't say
stars
root.
And,
I didn't say root.
They're scrappy. There's the most talented scrappy team in the country, but with a horribly unlikable Tommy Rees, Kevin Steele. I mean, they fired their defensive coordinator 2 weeks into the season. You know what I mean? This is not a likable bunch. This is not no. There's nothing like them. They are winning. I'll give them that. They seem to be getting better. They got a great defense and special teams. I get it, but no, I can't. I don't know. You're out there today, man. I don't know what the hell is going on over there.
Alabama traditionally is boring. They beat the shit out of people. They don't play exciting, interesting games. They don't like the personalities. Saban is a grumpy, angry, old curmudgeon that people like to hate. Like none of that is true about this team. They are far more. This is the most interesting Alabama team that I've watched in 15 years. That's just a fact. They are more interesting because you don't know what to expect. You don't know what they're going to do. The quarterback is very interesting to me. I think he's a very interesting personality type. He has a very interesting skill set. I think Tommy Rees needs to figure out how to design some quarterback run plays if they want to beat LSU next weekend. But Nick Saban he's all chummy with the fans and grabbing cigars, and he's giving great answers he's given, old slappy guy on the radio show, credit for the point he's making about the offensive line. Like, he's a totally different guy this year. You said that all summer. You said it all season. He's behaving differently, and the team is behaving differently than they've ever behaved before. And if they play Georgia, tell me who the country's rooting for in the SEC championship game. Tell me who's America rooting for? Not diehard SEC fans, not diehard Auburn fans and Tennessee fans and LSU fans who hate Alabama every second of every day. I understand you guys. Alabama, Georgia, each of them have one loss. They're playing for the right to make the playoff in the SEC championship game. Who is America rooting for? They are not rooting for Georgia.
I mean, why not? Why wouldn't they? I think people like the,
no, because all the bullshit off the field. No, they're the two. People get tired of the champion. all the car stuff, all the arrests, the lawsuits, people are not rooting for Georgia.
They got all those issues in Alabama. They just pay the police off. Remember, that's what Jeremy Pruitt said.
Georgia's police aren't being paid off either. Don't get into that stuff. I'm just saying the casual observer from around the country is seeing something more interesting from Alabama than ever before. And I find Jalen Milroe to be very likable. You can't tell me what to like or not like.
Maybe I pick up what you're picking up, what you're throwing down here, because this is Saban's last year. So maybe they will.
See, there you go. He's retiring.
Maybe they'll root for him to make it to the championship and just get obliterated in his final showdown. I can see you there. Yeah, I would root for that. Maybe if you could lose like 69-0 in the national championship game.
Yeah. Look. I can put my fandom aside and be like, Jalen Milroe's a good kid, and I want to see him do well, and I think he's interesting, and I think his skill set's interesting, and I like watching him play. He's the number 2 most efficient quarterback in America in yards per attempt. I mean, he's an interesting guy. He makes big plays in the second half. He's getting sacked every week. He's got no help from his offensive line. Like, it's just an interesting team. They're way more interesting than any other normal Bama team, which just is like barely even worth watching. Bama's normally not even worth watching. They're like, it's boring, and this is not a boring Alabama team. So that's all. That's my theory, and you don't have to agree, and none of you in the comments have to agree either. But I'm the one with the microphone, so
I don't think anyone agrees. That is correct.
That's fine. So there you go. Otherwise, the only question I have about Alabama, because I'll go back to it's the design quarterback run is the only thing that they've got to add that to the game. Tommy Reese, somebody in the facility put the design quarterback run in place. And once you have that, the offense actually could be pretty good, and they can beat LSU, and maybe they can hang with Georgia. I don't know. We'll see this weekend against Florida for Georgia, but that's the only thing I really have to say about the team. So interesting and likable. That's fair, Matt. That's fine. If you don't think those are the same, that's fair. I like things that are interesting though. To me, covering the game, that is the same thing. Like Nick Saban has been a far more likable character this year than he's ever been before. They have a more likable quarterback than they've had. I mean, frankly, Bryce Young and Tua.
I like Jalen Hurts. He was very likable.
Jalen Hurts is very likable. I agree. I guess what this team reminds me of? 2017 Bama. We've said that for months now. This is a 2017 Bama reincarnated, and they're trying to win the same way. Maybe it works against LSU. Maybe it doesn't.
Was that the one that got Deshaun in the rematch?
No, they lost to Deshaun in the rematch in 16. They beat Deshaun in the first one in 15. It was the Jalen Hurts true freshman year where they played bully ball and they leaned on folks. They did not win the division. And then they beat Georgia with Tua in the second half in the championship game. But Jalen Hurts you're absolutely right. Jalen Hurts was an extremely likable person as a character in this story that we call college football. And Jalen Milroe and Saban are way like Bryce Young, douchey. I don't know, man. Really? Tua douchey? I don't know. That seems a bridge too far for me. I don't know. AJ McCarron, douchey. AJ McCarron.
I got to meet him the other day, and I was like, I was as nice as I could be.
In college, he was douchey.
Oh, okay.
I've actually.
This was like a week ago.
I've actually done some work with him too on the air. So I'm like, he's a nice guy now, but like in college, the character of AJ McCarron as the quarterback of the Alabama Crimson Tide, there was like a small douche factor there, like a little bit of douche. I don't think Tua and Bryce have that. Certainly Jalen Hurts did not. So there you go. Okay. Anyway, I knew I would get both those topics would get you fired up because you're all pissed off about Tennessee, but actually I saw some signs of a program that is building, and that's what matters to me. So. Why don't talk about Michael that way, Jeff? Don't talk about Michael that way.
That's funny.
Look, I just present the takes, man. These are just my opinions, just my takeaways. Okay. Do you want to talk? Let's talk Missouri because they deserve some real coverage here.
Yeah.
I'm not sure there's a team. Now, I don't know if this means they're good enough to beat Georgia because I don't think that yet. But the thing that I keep seeing when I watch Missouri is that they don't have a single major glaring weakness. They can beat you a lot of different ways. I'm not sure like they are one of the most complete teams in the country. I don't know if it means they're good enough to beat Georgia, but there is no weakness on that football team.
Yeah, 2 weeks to prepare. Georgia coming off, it's going to be a physical game against Florida. There's a lot to like about it. I mean, cousin Shane, he can't nail a lock to save his life, but he called it. I mean, hell, he said 11 wins at first for Mizzou, and everybody thought he was damn crazy as hell. He
still might be crazy.
Well, he might be the world's smartest man for all I know. You know what? So, yeah, I can't believe it. I mean, Coach of the Year. Even if they go 10-2, I think you got to give Drink Coach of the Year. Brady Cook. I don't even know if they give out Most Improved Player, but he's got to be there. Yeah. That was the best defense they played too last week. Of course, South Carolina's awful, but they're hitting their stride at the perfect time, right as the schedule ramps up.
I do agree with that. They've played weird games with Florida. They have not played well against Tennessee, so they'll get both of those with opportunities to win. This is the same thing I'm just saying with Tennessee. Like, Missouri is building, and if Missouri goes and loses to Georgia, it is not an indictment of Eli Drinkowitz or Brady Cook or Missouri. They are not supposed to win that football game, but they have a chance.
They've already hit the over.
Right, so they have a chance, and it is about building a program. And I know that fans don't function that way inside the season. They are week to week, day to day, Saturday to Saturday. And I understand that. But when I look at Missouri and I see them going 10-2 or even 9-3, let's say they lose to Tennessee and Georgia, that's still an extraordinary season with major questions that got answered. And this is a thing that I think I'm coming around on this year more than anything else. You have to finish the season with answers to questions. And sometimes that's about personnel. Sometimes that's about players. Sometimes that's about coaches. Sometimes that's about your staff. You think Sam Pittman has an answer now about his offensive coordinator? Like,
yep.
at least he's got an answer. He didn't know at the beginning of the year this is what was going to happen, and now he's got an answer. And Kirby Moore has clearly answered the question. The defensive staff now, Coach Baker's done an excellent job 2 years in a row. They have answers at Missouri now, and they can now build from that moving forward, whatever happens the rest of the season.
And I think they're about to land another 5-star. So,
yeah,
the future is very bright. They can keep this thing rolling, and they're going to have to keep Drink. It's wild how a couple months ago a lot of people wanted his ass fired. Now it's going to shift to, can we keep him? Because he has tried to leave there before, and I don't know if he will again, but I don't know.
I will say this, and I think you know this: the Eli Drinkowitz relationship with the people in charge at Missouri, that's an interesting one. That's just a fascinating thing to keep an eye on. For a lot, like you said, the dynamics are changing, and if he starts getting calls from folks, that's an interesting. I would say, Eli, dude, you're building something good. You might want to just endear yourself to the crowd and stick it out, stay committed, maybe go through proper channels to get contract extensions, whatever.
Right. And, who knows? I mean, they have literally changed the laws down there to help him. You're not going to get that in some other places too. I mean, they're bending over backwards to help him. And facilities, as Shane Beamer will let you know, their facilities are under much needed upgrading. And what a dick comment that was after another loss. But I'll take
Shane Beamer along with these good old boy coaches this weekend. Not a good weekend for them. Josh Heupel, Sam Pittman, Shane Beamer. Not a good weekend for them.
Yeah, but I'm starting to hear it from around the SEC. I mean, Shane Beamer's act's wearing thin. And again, I don't know that really matters.
Too early. That's too early for that, don't you think?
No, literally, people are reaching out to me. People of importance saying, "What in the hell is this guy? Why does he keep doing this? Why does he? Why is it right after a loss he's making these comments?"
I think he should look. He should watch what Sam Pittman does. Like the problem with what Sam Pittman's doing, and we can talk about this. Firing Danny knows. The problem with Sam Pittman is that he's sort of like I love that he's honest. I love that he's just a guy. I love that he says the thing that everyone knows that everyone's thinking. but that can get you in trouble sometimes, and that's not fair to Sam Pittman. Like the media will pick up on something he says. Like I listened to that press conference and I was like, whoa, dude, you're way too focused on like getting fired here. Like that you shouldn't be talking about that stuff. But then at the same time, I want him to be honest and I want him to be himself. And so I don't want to knock him for the thing that I appreciate about him. Whereas with Shane Beamer, like I appreciate it, what he does. I think it's funny. I think it's interesting, but like you can't blame players for stuff. You got to take ownership of stuff. And if you're going to talk shit when you win, that's great. I think you deserve the right to do that. But you got to take it a little bit on the chin when you lose.
I don't mind Pittman talking about getting fired because that's what people are talking about. I think it's stupid when these guys pretend, the AD's got my back. I just talked to, Will Muschamp's, he's done that 20 times, No, I just got done with old Tanner. Tanner says I'm good, and then a week later his ass fired. It's stupid. So, no, I didn't like the fact, but again, he's being honest. He said he didn't know what to do, and that kills him. But if you listen to what he said, I don't know if you've heard the latest one after he fired Danny. So a lot of revealing comments about them practicing certain things and not being run for whatever reason, and we can't have 25 dropbacks with this offensive line. I don't know. I appreciate the fact that he speaks to that level.
No, I do too. And what I'm saying is that sometimes that's going to hurt him, right? Like I'm not, you and I won't hurt him for that. Like we're not going to knock Sam Pittman for saying the truth, but there are people that will in the press. There are fans that will. Like it just kind of comes with the territory. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? Like if you are, we beg you for a quote, we beg you for something of honesty, we beg you for a moment of real human emotion, and then you give it to us, and we're like, oh, why the fuck did you say that? So like it's a tough spot. But what you can't do is what Shane Beamer's doing, which is point fingers, blame people, make it about other things when you just need to. All you got to do is just go to the podium and say, look, I got to do better. All you got to do is say it's my fault and I got to do better. And that's all you got to do. And then
I think right now we're seeing, there was a movement to hire like the CEO coach, which there's pros and cons to every hire. But obviously, it kind of was already known, but it goes without saying these CEO coaches, when they hire the wrong coordinators, the whole thing doesn't work. You know what I mean?
So no, I agree with you. I think Shane Beamer and South Carolina have put away some equity in the bank though the last 2 years. I would hope they overachieved 2 years in a row, gave their fans something more than any fan base expected from them each of the last 2 seasons. I think that's equity. You should have some equity. I had this team finishing 6th in the conference in the division ahead of only Vanderbilt. That's where they're going to finish. So they're kind of right where I expected. Mm-hmm. So I think you've got equity, and I don't think that people should be turning on him this fast. If people are seeing things behind the scenes that is different than just some like silly, stupid comments to the press, trashing the Missouri thing is what it is. Like doing the sunglasses thing is what it is. Like that kind of stuff doesn't really matter. If he's still doing the job behind the scenes, then I think he's earned plenty of time. I don't think there's any rush to run him out of town. I will say this about your CEO thing. I don't think it's CEO as much as it is like Josh Heupel sort of just like feels like your dad sometimes. Like he just talks like a dad. He's just a regular guy. I mean that in a very complimentary way. Sam Pittman, what do we like about him? He's just a guy. He's just honest. He's just himself. Shane Beamer, we may not like that guy, but he is just himself, right? He's just honest. He's just himself. Mark Stoops is that way. He's just kind of a guy, just himself, just says the thing. He's not a robot like Kirby and Jimbo and Nick Saban. I'm curious because all of those guys had a bad weekend. I'm curious if just hire a ball coach who cares about his people. Like that was that group took it on the chin this past weekend. And so I want Sam Pittman to do well, but there's not a lot of signs of progress with that team. Offensive line's worse. Receiving core's worse.
But the defense and special teams are pretty solid.
Defense is better, and that's because Sam Pittman hired a pretty good coach. Like, right? Like we like that hire. So I'm not ready to throw. I think it's too early for hot seat talk with Beamer, but I think Sam Pittman needs to win some games down the stretch.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I know for a fact, this is not me speculating, that Beamer's act is wearing thin. And again, I'm not saying Ray Tanner's feeling that way, but just his peers around the conference.
Well, around the conference is different than inside the facility.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, you know.
Well, I mean, get the fact that he's got this crazy Rolodex, or at least I would assume, right? Growing up.
Oh, yeah.
Being Frank's son and working for Kirby and Philip Fulmer and Lincoln Riley. And then he turns around and he hires his best friend to be his offensive coordinator. And then he has to fire, that guy was awful. Then he hired Dow Loggins, who never called a play in college, and it was awful in the NFL. And then he hired Clayton White. I mean, this is not the hires of a guy that has this amazing Rolodex. So,
yeah.
I mean, I'm not breaking any news here, but apparently people are not eager to work for him is how I read that.
Well, if in fact that's true and people aren't eager to work for him, that's something that he should be evaluating in himself. Why do people not want to work with me? Like, that's an important thing to ask yourself. If
Probably
you're a coach.
Because if you lose a game, he's going to throw you under the damn bus.
I don't think the behavior has made much sense. I think the team is sort of right where I expect. I don't think there's any surprises. Spencer Rattler, if anything, Spencer Rattler's been better than I expected. But the offensive and defensive lines are huge questions. They hired a coordinator who's an NFL guy. They scored a bunch of points and they can't bust a grape. I mean, they kind of are where they're supposed. They play a really, really hard schedule. I mean, that schedule's really hard. I mean, they could win 2 more games, and 4-8 is not out of the question.
That's a tough sell in year 3.
I know. Do you don't really believe that like every single season is linear and it's a line graph that is going up every year, right? Like, you don't actually believe that for every team, right? Like you realize that players graduate at different times.
Do they?
Like, yeah, like Hendon Hooker leaves, and then like they don't have Hendon Hooker anymore at Tennessee, so they're not going to be as good.
Right, but I didn't realize that like everybody wanted Hendon Hooker. I thought he was just a cast off that nobody wanted. Well, that got turned into a Heisman contender. I mean, I think that is also true. And now they signed who some people regard as not the number 1 quarterback, the number 1 player in the country. And
did Tim Tebow start as a freshman?
On the level of all these other guys, Lawrence and Tua and all these, and
Lawrence didn't start as a true freshman until halfway through the season,
and he just sits on the bench, and we don't even see him.
Tua didn't start as a true freshman. Tim Tebow didn't start as a true freshman. You can keep going. Vince Young didn't play as a true freshman.
I bet none of those guys
keep going.
Came and got on the team before a bowl game, and then got a spring, and then got a summer, and then got a fall camp.
Dude, are you telling me that enrolling early is now the reason Nico Iamaleava should be a star right now as a true freshman? On a team that's clearly flawed? Why are we back to Tennessee now?
I think he should be at least given looks.
I think he is clearly a better thrower of the football and will run the offense better than Joe Milton. It does not mean he's better right now. And it doesn't mean you just end the season and like just because he's not ready right now doesn't mean he's not going to be. Right?
Well, yeah, but I think you got to play him against like Austin Peay and shit like that.
Great, I agree.
They're not playing him.
Well, I think he should. They've been in the middle of games with critical possessions. There's not been a lot of chances to play him. He also needs to eat a few pork chops. So it's okay.
So did Tyler Bray, man, and he could launch that thing.
It's okay for a 17, 18-year-old kid to need to put on like some grown man SEC weight. It's okay for that to happen. So, no, see, Benjamin, I think it's the other way around. I think Mike is doing everything to just disagree with me. That's all he's doing. Like, Alabama's likable. That's just my opinion. I thought Tennessee showed me progress. Well, I expected them to play worse, and they played better than I expected. I don't know. It's just my opinion. I think Missouri's really good. Do you think Missouri's really good? Do we agree?
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, they're very good. Can they beat Georgia? I guess if they play a perfect game.
I think Georgia's beatable.
I agree. I don't know if it's Missouri, though.
Yeah. You're right. Tennessee, of course.
I think it's Ole Miss. Ole Miss. I heard you downplaying Ole Miss's win, man, by the way. I think that's a pretty decent win for Ole Miss. Like, not a good team they beat. They didn't play a great game. But guess what happens in college football? You play 12 of them, and you don't always play great. You don't always play perfect, and sometimes you have to survive difficult situations. They were up by 2 touchdowns in the final minutes of the game. They had the game largely in hand. Jackson Dart was brilliant. They ran the football very well, over 200 passing and rushing against a solid defense in a hostile environment. To me, that is Ole Miss doing what Ole Miss normally doesn't do, which is handle their business on the road and do the job. They did the job last week.
And it seems like a lot of Auburn people are saying, "What the hell are we doing?" It's Hugh Freeze in over his head. I mean, they're already asking these questions, and yet we're supposed to turn around and say this number 13. That was a hell of a win. We're ready to run off our coach. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I mean, I guess yeah. A win's a win. Is particularly at night on the road in the SEC. That should always be celebrated. But I just don't know what the hell to make of Ole Miss. And now they're getting the running game going. That's critical to the whole thing. If they can run on Georgia, they can beat Georgia. I don't think they can run on Georgia though. But
I don't think valid.
I don't think they can run on these elite teams. They can run on Auburn. That's fantastic. They couldn't.
Did you just call Alabama elite? I think you just called Alabama elite. Is what I just heard.
Their defense is certainly elite. Yeah,
they can't run on these elite teams, aka
it's
Alabama.
It's the defenses, obviously, that they're running on. I don't think they could probably run on Tennessee. You know what I mean? Or
42 minutes, 36 seconds. I'm just timestamping it, so I pull it and I clip it, use it on social. Mike Bratton says Bama elite.
But again, and I don't think they're here's one I think everybody's overlooking. Everybody's looking at Georgia. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball in A&M. It's
a good test.
I think A&M may beat them.
I didn't think Tennessee was going to be able to run the ball in A&M, and they did. So A&M is. Look, South Carolina is not going to beat A&M, but A&M could get beat by everybody else. So,
right,
I would not be surprised to see Ole Miss. To me, it's more about the timing for the Ole Miss game. It's about looking ahead to Tennessee the next week. It's about coming off the Florida and Missouri games in back-to-back schedules. Like they're going to play Florida, Missouri. I think Florida's going to play them pretty well this weekend. I don't know why. I can't explain it. I think Georgia wins. I think Florida covers the 14.5. I think it is a dogfight, no pun intended. And I think it's physical. It's emotional. It's the way a Florida-Georgia game should be. I think Graham Mertz is efficient enough to keep the ball and like stay. I hate the cliche, stay ahead of the sticks, but I think they're gonna take what the defense gives them. All these stupid coaching cliches. They're not going to force it, and they're going to play Georgia into a long, grinded out game the way Tennessee probably tried to play with Alabama last week. And I think it's going to work. And I don't know if Georgia can make the big X play the way Alabama and Jalen Milroe did last week. I think Georgia wins. But then they play Missouri in what's going to be the same kind of game, right? Like another physical, really high-intensity, emotional showdown. And then you look ahead to Tennessee, and all of a sudden you got Ole Miss in the middle. I just think this is the toughest stretch of Georgia's schedule, these 4 games. And so I want to see what the compounding effect has on them without their best player, first-year quarterback. Let's see what that looks like when you have to go back to back to back to back against 4 pretty good teams. That's what I want to see.
Yeah. Without Brock Bowers, too.
Yeah.
So
are you with me on the Florida game? Are you with me with Florida playing? I think they're going to play very well in this game.
No, not at all. No.
Really? Why not?
No, because they barely beat South Carolina, who's just awful. So no, I mean, I'm not saying
that's on the road where Billy is great. So
yeah. I mean, no. I mean, it's hilarious. We fire Billy Napier one week, then we crown him the next. You know what I mean? So this is he was crowned last game. He'll get fired after this one, and then we'll crown him. Who else do they got to play? Let's see some dirtbag Arkansas. We'll crown him for beating Arkansas. We'll fire him for losing to LSU. At Missouri, that's a road game. That's a loss, and then Florida State. Close loss, so we'll crown him again. I mean, that's what we're going to do with Billy Napier here at the next.
Hey, the Missouri-Florida game is maybe the weirdest game in the entire conference. I think Missouri won in Gainesville with like 119 yards of offense one year. It was worse. It was a worse offensive performance than Arkansas and Mississippi State. So I just think that they will. They're not there personnel-wise, obviously, with Georgia. They're not ready to compete with Georgia. But can you get up for a rivalry game with a bye week and a quarterback that's playing really efficient football, a couple of playmakers in space? I think they are going to It'll be the best they can do. Is basically what I'm getting at.
Yeah. No, I hear you. That's a wild. I mean, all these Missouri games are interesting to me. Well, as they close out the season.
Well,
I mean, they're all winnable and they're all losable.
They're a team that's fighting for a division championship. I think that makes everything they do interesting. There's no question about it. Mm-hmm. Mississippi State, Auburn. I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about with some of these games. We can get to Tennessee, Kentucky, because Tennessee has traditionally owned this game. Quickly on the Arkansas thing, 7-3. I mean, I don't even know what to say other than like I heard a few people asking questions, and I think somebody asked a question in the press conference as well after the game about KJ Jefferson. And I just want to be like, the only thing you don't need to ask questions about at Arkansas is the quarterback. That's it. He's the only one you don't have to ask a question about. So if somebody's asking questions about KJ Jefferson, like do better and pick a better question, because that's the one guy you don't have to ask questions about.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought it was pretty revealing that Sam Pittman, basically it said we're lifeless. There's no energy. So
that's bad. It's a bad sign when it's his job to keep the energy up.
Right. So if they have some energy, can they win? I think they can win some of these games, but I've kind of been saying that all year and it's not happened. But it's wild that the same team that basically pushed Bama to the limit, that pushed LSU to the limit, was the same team we saw score 3 points against Mississippi. I can't wrap my head around it.
When the coach, and this is where you kind of get killed if you say the honest thing. If you come out and say, like, we just don't have energy, well, that's the one thing that it's your job. I mean, your job as the head coach is to get a team up, to get them motivated, to get them focused, to have them confident in their game plan. And that's sort of something you have to do every day, like all the time. It's not just like a big pregame speech. It's something you have to instill as the process, right, that Saban does. So that's a concern when he says that, because that is a direct indictment of himself. And I appreciate that about Sam Pittman. I'm not going to hammer him for it. But that was a pretty pathetic showing. One of the worst. I think it's the worst since the 3-2 game, right? Fewest points scored in an SEC win since the Mississippi State Auburn 3-2 game from whatever it was, 12 years ago, I think, 10 years ago, 11 years ago, something like that. So Mississippi State at Auburn, like, avert your eyes, I guess. Not safe for work. I don't know. Put a label on it. X-rated. I don't know what to say about that one. Somebody needs.
I would say the winner though is not guaranteed, but going to take a huge step towards making a bowl game. I mean, there's a lot on the line for both of them.
I know you probably hate this, but like, the only reason I care about getting to bowl eligibility is practice. You get about 15 extra practices for your young players, and a trip during the winter months. That's fun. That's cool too.
Well, and I think both coaching staffs that's vitally important for both of these guys.
No, it is for both those teams. Year one, to have the extra month of practice, to have the extra time to recruit, to have the things that you can sell to your players, to build energy and momentum. I completely agree. What actually happens in the bowl game is irrelevant to your program long term, but it is critical to have it. So I agree. It's a big game for both teams. And listen, Mississippi, I guess the one piece of context that's important is that Will Rogers didn't play, I guess. So that's important to note. I don't, you've been begging for Mike Wright. You thought Mike Wright should have been the starter from the beginning. So I guess you got your wish, and they scored a whole 7 points. So
I know you hate bowl games and all that. You just hate college football. But let me ask you this. If you missed a bowl, let's say you went 5-7, but would you rather that, or would you rather be 6-6 and just get completely hammered in the bowl game, or 5-7, but you win your last game, regular season, what have you, or you get 6-6 and you just get obliterated in the bowl game, and the fans have to live with that for 9 months? Which one do you think is better?
Well, if you're asking me, are fans smart and rational, and which one's best for the program? Because fans are not smart and rational. It's not short for logical or rational. Fan is short for fanatic. So I don't expect fans to take that hat off and look at the result of the Poulan Weed Eater Bowl in context of what's important, which means nothing for your program moving forward at all. Again, the fact that your freshman and sophomore players got 15 extra practices, and you got to be around your team and your coaching staff for an extra 2 months, and that you get to sell that trip to recruits, is what actually matters to the development of your program long term. whether or not you beat Air Force in the Liberty Bowl means absolutely nothing long-term for the success or failure of your program. And we have science to back it up. There is no data that indicates winning your bowl game or losing your bowl game indicates future success or failure. There's no data that backs it up. So getting to the bowl game is vastly more important. If I'm the coach, I'd rather get blown out in a bowl game than go 5-7.
Were you referencing Missouri there? Because I think haven't they lost to like Air Force and
great.
They've lost to a couple of these in the bowl games.
Not great, but you know what I mean.
But that's the point. It's set up the success of this year.
That's exactly right.
Because they got them practices in.
Although Brady Cook wasn't practicing, I don't think, because of the injury. So who knows? Who knows? Tennessee, Kentucky. Let's talk about this one. Tennessee has dominated this rivalry. They've been the games in Kentucky have been very interesting and fun. And look, which quarterback can hit a barn with a football? I don't know. Neither one of these guys is particularly accurate right now. Tennessee's the better football team, but Kentucky's at home. I was a little surprised at the number. Tennessee being favored by 3.5 on the road seems a little like that. I feel like this is more of a pick 'em, but Tennessee's the better team. I think throughout the course of the year, Tennessee has shown that they're the better team. That's all I was getting at with their performance against Bama, is that Tennessee and Kentucky's two biggest tests of the year. Tennessee played like a basically even matchup with one of them, and Kentucky pooped on themselves. So if you're trying to go A plus B equals C, Tennessee's the better team. Better line of scrimmage.
And I'm looking it up. Sorry, I swear I'm paying attention to what you're saying.
Sure.
One thing I'll have my eye on here, Braden, is 2 years ago when it was in Lexington, 45-42, Tennessee won.
Was that like 46 minutes time of possession for Kentucky, something like that?
Tennessee scored. It took them one play, 75 yards, 11 seconds. The next possession, 3 plays, 75 yards. It took 26 seconds. There was another field goal, took 16 seconds. That was right before half. Another touchdown drive took 45 seconds. But really, the right out the gate is kind of what I'm referencing. Last year, it was 5 plays, 75 yards, a minute 27. So clearly, Josh Heupel has got something figured out about Mark Stoops and that defense. And I think that'll be really interesting because it's not going to be this simplistic, but if Kentucky can shut down Tennessee in the first quarter, I think they win handily in this game.
You're saying if they're in the game, if they don't give up a couple of big plays early, they're in the game. A couple of you guys in the comments have said this. Kentucky coming off the bye, UT, where are you emotionally and mentally? I think is important. This is a test. This is a huge test for Josh Heupel's control of the locker room. Not like from a culture standpoint, but like mentally. Your job is just as much a motivator. We just were talking about this with Sam Pittman. So I assume it's the same reason I like Florida to play well. I think teams coming off, extra time to prepare for a rivalry game is important for Kentucky. They've got a pretty good defensive line, which I think will hold up well-ish against the Tennessee running attack. I just don't, there's nothing about Devin Leary, unfortunately for Kentucky. And this is probably one of the things I've been most wrong about the entire season. I love the play calling. I like the weapons. The offensive line's better. All that's true. The quarterback hasn't been able to make it all go. Mm-hmm. And so if you can't, say what you want about Jalen Milroe, but the dude makes plays. He makes big plays every game. And Devin Leary hasn't made a big play the entire season. So he's going to have to hit on something down the field. Like they can't line up with Ray Davis and try to beat that Tennessee defensive line. I don't think.
Mm. Yeah, I'm kind of curious about the crowd too. I think this is a big enough game for Kentucky fans that they'll show up, but I don't know. It's a running joke, but it's kind of true. It's basketball season already. You know what I mean? Like
I think Kentucky fans are too spoiled.
Well, I think especially if they lose this game, it's basketball season. You know what I mean? But because this is a rivalry, I think they'll show up. But I don't know. Two bad losses, one at home. Yeah. So I think that is it's not going to be a Tennessee takeover by any means but I'm just kind of curious about the crowd and how because Kentucky has beaten some really good teams up there.
Yeah.
But it's taken a great performance by the crowd too. So I don't know. That's in the back of my mind as well.
I hope it's a great game. I hope the crowd is good for Kentucky. There's very few uniform games in the SEC that are better than Kentucky and Tennessee. Like the two uniforms just look so good on a football field. Better on grass than on fake turf that alternates colors, but whatever. I think Kentucky, Tennessee on the same field looks great. It's just a great looking. It's like Florida and Tennessee. That's why it looks great on a stadium. Lexington's a great place to go hang out, drink some bourbon. So I hope it's a crazy crowd. I think Kentucky's going to play well, but I think Tennessee wins.
Can Kentucky have any? Can this season be defined as a success by any metric if Kentucky loses this game?
I mean, you have to tell me what their final record is.
I mean, I don't think it cares or matters, does it?
I mean, beat the shit out of Florida.
Right. I mean,
so if you beat South Carolina, if you beat Mississippi State,
Florida's not even ranked.
See, this is where you can't go into like these extremes because that's not where the world doesn't live in the extremes, dude.
So
like, if you want to live on a message board,
and
you want to live on a message board,
we got our ass kicked by Georgia, Missouri. Let's say Tennessee kicks our ass. Bama's going to kick our ass.
Go post on a message board, dude.
I mean, what are we doing here? What if they lose to Louisville too?
You lose to Tennessee, if you lose to Bama. If you go 8-4 with wins over rival Florida and rival Louisville, I don't know how that's not considered a successful season for Kentucky.
I don't know. That would be not great in my opinion.
You know that they were like 2-10 like 3 straight years, right?
Like 20 years ago, right? Are we just going to keep going back to that? We were bad 20 years ago. Who cares?
So according to your scheme and plan for every program in the SEC and everywhere in college football, they just all should be winning the national championship in the third year? Like every team
third
is like
year?
this.
No, he's been there for 11.
No.
He's got to do something. We are spending money in NIL.
I'm not going to spend more time on this show debating Mark Stoops because you're just the greatest coach in Kentucky history with multiple 10-win seasons, something that no one has ever accomplished in modern Kentucky history. This is the same argument with Dan Mullen at Mississippi State. Not
He's
a good coach at
C+ coach, though.
Not a good coach at Florida, but Dan Mullen is the most successful coach in the history of Mississippi State football, and you have to base it on expectations for Mississippi State. You cannot put Georgia expectations on Kentucky. You just can't. You can't. You can't put Alabama expectations on Ole Miss. You can't do it. It's not real life. It's divorced from reality. You can't do it. So multiple 10-win seasons, churning out first-round draft picks, developing All-Americans, competing week in and week out against the best teams in the SEC, that is a reasonable expectation for Kentucky. Winning 11 games and winning the SEC East has never been done before.
Well, he's the best of all time. You just said it. He's got to do it at some point, doesn't he?
No. That's not what Kentucky is. I don't like.
Why not? Why should they have their bar so low?
It's not low. The fact that the fans could be upset with 8-4 tells you that the bar has been raised significantly. But like, there's a reason that no team.
Right.
There's a reason only like 16 teams have won the national championship over the last 30 years.
But we're saying we're just looking at it as 8 wins, but that's Ball State, Eastern Kentucky, Akron, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, which has Mississippi State has essentially got an interim coach. South Carolina, I mean, their coach is blaming everybody. He'll blame anybody and everybody. And Louisville, and that's a big if because aren't they playing? I don't know anything.
Louisville's
about it,
good. Louisville's good.
So I'm not even saying they're if year 1 Louisville guy beats you and you're in year 11.
So people are in the comments.
Great.
It's not about lowering expectations. It's about understanding like what a roster looks like and what our expectations for a program. Like there are teams in college football and in the SEC that have 100,000 seat stadiums, unlimited resources, deep pockets, and they're the reason they have won all the championships. It doesn't mean that like and this is where the 12-team playoff matters so much, is to Matt Corral Ole Miss, is to Bobby Petrino Arkansas, is to 10-2 Kentucky. Like I truly don't. Missouri's best teams ever won the East on like a fluke, basically. And we're going to learn this year that Missouri is probably at its best a 10-2 team. And because you cannot compete with teams that have first-round picks at every position. That's never been done in college football. I don't think it's fair to ask people to do that and do the thing that's never been done. But in a 12-team playoff, those 10-2 teams get to go show it on the field to other teams from other conferences. And that's where I think that there's value and success. And you can raise the bar based on that. I think asking a guy who recruits 6th in the SEC East every year to beat the team that recruits number 1 in the country every year, I don't think that's reasonable. I think that's ridiculous.
Well, they got the best quarterback out of the portal by many regards. Many people said that.
Sam Hartman was the best.
Well, all right, number 2 then. They got Ray Davis, who I had on my all SEC ballot because I thought he was elite, and I think he's proven that. They got the best defensive coordinator right now in the SEC, and we're sitting here saying, well, they finished strong, 8-4.
All right, I back up on the fluke 2013. I back it up. You guys are correcting me. I apologize. James Franklin, the quarterback, not the coach. I apologize. But continue, Mike. I apologize.
I just I don't know. I think we gotta see something here.
I think the see something here is insulting to what he's accomplished. And I'm tired of arguing about Mark Stoops with you on the program. I'm tired of it. Because now, like Tennessee, Josh Heupel, same thing with Jimbo Fisher, Texas A&M. That's not good enough at Texas A&M. The $100 million contract and $700 million facility upgrade and recruiting in the top 5, it's about the players. If you have top 5 talent, you need to coach them to be a top 5 team. And asking South Carolina and Vanderbilt and Kentucky and Mississippi State and these programs to have top 5 talent is irrational. It's not possible.
So Mark Stoops to Texas A&M, he'll win.
What's so funny about this?
He'll win 9 games annually and never achieve anything of significance.
What's so funny about your argument is if you ever actually just said to me, I don't think Mark Stoops can win a championship at a big-time program, I would agree with you. And I would say that's where he tops out. Like, I agree with you. I don't think he's an elite coach who can go to Alabama and win national championships. But I think it takes a different type of person to get a Kentucky to where they are today, a different type of coach. Like, that's why I think Lance Leipold at Kansas is an elite. He's a great coach. I don't think he would be able to recruit in the SEC at Texas A&M. And I think it takes a different type of guy. It takes a different type of recruiting assassin.
Who's this assassin? Because isn't Jimbo one of those guys?
There are none.
Jimbo's a good recruiter.
Yeah, there are none.
There are none? There's no candidates for A&M?
We don't know. No. Who's the guy? Tell me who's the guy who's going to automatically be.
That's what I'm asking you.
Well, it's a conversation, Mike.
Oh.
I'm telling you, I don't any of the top Mike Elko at Duke. I don't know if he can recruit at the highest level. I don't know. I think he's a really good defensive coach. I think he's clearly showing he can develop guys at Duke. Mm-hmm. Lance Leipold at Kansas is really good. Chris Kleiman at Kansas State's really good. Like, there's a lot of really good coaches.
What about Washington coach? Can we get him at A&M?
Kalen DeBoer is a very good offensive-minded coach.
Perfect. Let's get him.
They just needed a defensive touchdown to beat a really bad Arizona State team.
What's he making? Probably like $4 million a year. We can give him that a quarter of the season.
I don't know. That Big Ten money is going to be very different than the Pac-12 money. So Washington's a pretty good job. I would also, by the way, I think didn't Jimbo try to hire the Washington offensive coordinator this offseason? And the coordinator was like, "Fuck you."
Who's the coach at Air Force? He's doing good. Can we get him?
He's been there 18 years.
It's time. It's time.
Troy Calhoun's been there 18 years. Oh man. All right. I guess we don't need to talk about the Vanderbilt Ole Miss game, although that is a weird game. That weird stuff happens in that game a lot. So, okay. Yes, Andrew, exactly right. Billy Napier does not make $7 million a year to lose to Kentucky because Florida is a better program than Kentucky. It should beat Kentucky more times than not, which means you shouldn't lose to Kentucky.
Bo doesn't think Jimbo's getting fired. Is he getting fired?
$78 million buyout this year, $67 million buyout next year.
What if he loses to
South Carolina?
South Carolina.
There we go. I think he beats. Well, they're a 14.5-point favorite. They'll win this. I don't think they lose this weekend. But
I'm saying, what if? Let's give South Carolina the win.
Nothing is out of the realm of possibility in the state of Texas. It's like Florida.
Yeah,
you can't ever nothing is in stone, except for the Alamo. I guess it's in stone. Nothing. You can't. You just there's oil money everywhere, and if they want to make it up and spend their own money, fine. But there's no way to predict it. I mean, $78 million. I think that's
what we do here. We predict things, sir.
No, I'm not in the prediction business. I think Gus's buyout at Auburn was the biggest buyout ever, like $24 million. 78 would set a new record. Talk about raising the bar.
We can top it.
67. If he coaches all of next season, one more whole season, the buyout is $67 million.
Yeah, so you might as well just do it now.
What's the difference in 67 and 79? Nothing. The year after that, $58 million buyout.
We got to fire Bjork as well, right?
Well, he didn't hire him and he didn't write the contract, so I don't know. I agree with you. I tend to clean slate as I tend to be how I go with things, but I don't think he didn't write that contract for Jimbo, so that might be his get out of jail free card, maybe. So I don't know. Okay, all right. I think that does it. You've annoyed me enough today, but I do appreciate hanging out with you. I know that's your goal every week on the show. So
yep.
And my job is to annoy all the commenters and all the great listeners. So thank you guys all for hanging out. Make sure you check out the YouTube page, 440 Sports. We got SEC previews over there. The podcast, everywhere you get your podcast, SEC Football Live. Tell somebody about it. And appreciate you guys hanging out and listening with us. For Mike Bratton, I am Braden Gall. Thanks for hanging out. Mike, enjoy the weekend, my man. We'll talk to you next week. Have a good one.